All right, well, we are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're located. We appreciate everyone taking the time to join us today. So today we're going to be presenting a joint webinar between WithoutWire inventory platform and eOne showing our SmartConnect tool. So we're going to be going through some slides today, discussing our products and how they work together, and then getting into a live demo. All right, so today we're going to be talking about future-proofing your supply chain, and I'm going to let Steve Dwyer give an introduction here.
Yes, thank you, Mary, and welcome everyone. Pleased to be co-sponsoring this webinar today with eOne and their SmartConnect solution. Next slide. You can see our agenda today. We'll introduce both WithoutWire and eOne. Some of you are familiar with one or both of us already, so we'll get to the demo as quickly as possible. But we do want to talk about what we mean when we talk about WithoutWire Inventory Sciences as a WMS or inventory platform. And then Mary will introduce the SmartConnect integration platform. And then we have Brett and Chris kind of tag teaming on Brett doing the WithoutWire demonstration and Chris doing some demonstration of the integration through using SmartConnect. Then we'll talk next steps, question and answers. Please don't hesitate to type in a question at any time, and we'll try to address it as we go, or maybe some we'll need to save till the end, depending on timing. Next slide. WithoutWire was founded in 2001, years of distribution and manufacturing experience on our team, and field service experience as well. We'll talk about that in a slide or two, but as a proven solution, we have over 7,500 active sites around the world that are real-time integrated to Dynamics platforms or some of the other platforms that are out there in the marketplace. As a WMS solution, we are truly scalable and can integrate in three primary ways. One is through CSV import-export, it's kind of a standalone. The other is the Open API source system, allowing us to integrate to any platform. And the focus of today is around a middleware-based SmartConnect integration solution that we'll be showcasing. And all of how we scope, design, and deploy your solution is designed to provide our clients a rapid return on their investment. Next slide. The future of mobile barcode inventory. Many of you on the call today are getting to know Dynamics 365 Business Central very well. And you know that it has an inventory platform or module that comes with it. What you're probably also becoming aware is that it doesn't have that full supply chain capability that most clients need in terms of mobile barcode inventory as part of their solution. And so WithoutWire, with its strength in distribution, manufacturing, and field service, is a great fit for that Dynamics Business Central, 365 Business Central complementary solution to provide that mobile barcoded inventory traceability. Whether it's lot tracked, serial tracked, expiration dated, we can rotate FIFO, first in, first out, or FIFO, first expired, rotated throughout your supply chain, keeping full traceability. So maybe you have a bill of materials with raw materials and maybe nested bill of materials, and you have components out and you have concerns around recall. We have the ability with a 3-minute, 3-step digital recall to completely protect our clients' compliance, industry compliance, and protect their brand and image in the marketplace. We talked about real-time communication. We're going to focus on Dynamics today, and SmartConnect being our partner in middleware that we use for many of our platforms. We use SmartConnect for GP. We use it for NAV. We even use it for NetSuite. And again, our focus today is on the Dynamics 365 Business Central integration. We have many technologies that are leading in the industry that we deploy along with our inventory platform. and that includes Microsoft Power BI embedded dashboards to give those key performance indicators. And we have deployment methods of Microsoft Azure Cloud hosted or an on-premise. We still offer both solutions. We are seeing a pretty dramatic shift where it used to be 80% on-premise. We're seeing a shift to 80% cloud today. Next slide. In terms of field service, this is pretty unique for WithoutWire, and I did want to just spend one slide on this, where we're really a complementary to both Dynamics D365 Business Central and perhaps a CRM field service solution from Microsoft as well. And then think of a three-legged stool where WithoutWire does the mobile barcode inventory movement traceability so that we can track for a variety of industries that technician, that truck, that mobile warehouse on wheels, and complete jobs and work orders and service tickets, whether it's in the industry of lighting, fire security, and telecom, HVAC and mechanical contractors, medical and industrial equipment, testing and inspection, oil, gas, solar, and network security are several of the very common verticals that we are serving today with mobile inventory real-time capabilities that complement both CRM field service and the Dynamics 365 Business Central. Next slide. WithoutWire has a great breadth in best-of-breed functionality, but we're going to be focusing on the two blue highlighted boxes today. The inbound, so you can see the receiving, the put away, min-max based replenishment, all of that inbound activity and how that gets managed. Certainly these middle three areas are areas certainly we'll take offline and would love to explore further with you on an individual basis to meet your clients' needs. And then on the outbound, and when we say picking today, I want you to think not just of sales order picking, but it could be manufacturing order picking. It could be work order or job-based picks, and it can also be returns. We use the same core functionality in our picking for any of those workflow solutions. So we'll have that outbound, whether it's a single order pick or a wave order pick, lot directed, then a pack out where you have that print final documents, and maybe it's a 1 of 3, 2 of 3, 3 of 3 type of labeling that's needed. And any other final documents that you would print, like a bill of lading. Ultimately, you can ship, whether it's parcel or LTL or full truckload or container, and have that e-signature capture, truck loading, truck seals, ship confirmation types of capability. Next slide. WithoutWire also has what we call a use it free experience, which is our full system. It's not a trial version, and it's very simple to get started. You can, from the home page of our website, get logged in and get started, our website being withoutwire.com. You can also go to the App Store or Google Play and type in a search for WithoutWire, all one word, and you'll find our app, and you can get downloaded and started today and really experience our full solution. Just what Brett is showing you today is available to you with our free download. So easy to get started. Next slide. And then a schematic, just from an integration standpoint. Of course, you have SmartConnect in the middle, that yellow bar. You have your D365 talking real time with your WithoutWire inventory platform. But D365 is still the master of items, customers, vendors, purchase orders, sales orders, and you do all your invoicing through your financial tool. Lots and bin tracking can be synced in both systems, though many of our clients prefer to do the lot tracking and multi-bin tracking within our system. WithoutWire is going to do purchase order receipt. It's going to do the sales order fulfillment, replenishments, bin transfers, inventory adjustments, and cycle counts, an ABC blind cycle count. So very powerful complementary solution that is kind of deployed the way you're seeing it here, where the purchase order is created in D365. It flows through integration through SmartConnect to be down to the mobile device. So when that truck arrives, you can rapidly receive those goods, report the receipt record back to Dynamics 365. Similarly with sales orders, they're created in D365 or other tools, sent to WithoutWire through the SmartConnect integration to be picked, packed, print final documents, shipped from the mobile device, and then that fulfillment record is going to be provided back to D365 for posting and invoicing. Next slide.
All right, well, that brings it to me. Thanks, Steve. So I just wanted to give a brief overview of eOne. I know we have a lot of eOne partners on the call today, but in case anyone's just not familiar, my name is Mary Truis. I'm a partner development manager here at eOne Solutions, and I work very closely with WithoutWire. I also have Chris Hansen on the call today, who is our SmartConnect product manager. But a brief background, eOne was founded in 2001 out of Sydney, Australia. Today we have offices in Sydney, Australia, Fargo, North Dakota, Austin, Texas. We have some operations in Europe, and then people working remote throughout the United States as well. So we started out making no-code tools for Dynamics GP. So that's probably what most of you are most familiar with, and that's really where we got our start with tools like Smart List Builder and Extender, Node Builder, and all those good things. SmartConnect was created as a no-code integration tool and migration platform. So we quickly realized as a Dynamics GP partner that there were gaps in the integration world, and most GP people were using way more products than just Dynamics GP, and they needed to move data back and forth between them. Today, we have expanded that out way beyond Microsoft, so we're working with tools like Salesforce and NetSuite as well, and the Business Central and Dynamics 365 customer engagement applications too. And that's the tool that we've partnered together with WithoutWire to help bring integration between their system and Business Central, which is what we're going to focus on today because I know we have a lot of Business Central partners and customers on this call. So a good overview of SmartConnect. We can kind of demo SmartConnect from this whole infographic here. So as you can see, we've got a myriad of different data sources that we're able to work with. Some of these are pre-built connectors and other ones are custom connectors that we can make through REST services, which we're going to talk largely about today, but also integrating with files and ODBC connections, things like that. We can trigger that data in a number of different ways as well. So we can really customize this based on the integration and get that data to move exactly how you need it to and when you need it to. Something that SmartConnect does, which is way beyond a lot of other integration tools or just file transfer tools like Integration Manager, if you're familiar in the GP space, or just using Excel files to move back and forth, is that we can do all the transformations. So oftentimes when you're moving data from one system to another, that data needs to change to be able to get into the correct format for the destination system. So we're able to handle really complex transformations with SmartConnect. And then our data destinations, we're able to push data from one system into another, and that can really go into just as many systems, Business Central being one of them, but really we can work with any applications with different APIs that we're able to work with. Okay. So one thing I want to talk today about is our flexible deployment options. So a lot of people on this call are probably familiar with SmartConnect, which is an on-premise installed tool. But SmartConnect.com is our cloud-based tool, which is what we're going to focus on today because that's what we're using when we're talking about cloud applications like Business Central. So we have deployment options, and it's important to know the differences between them. So first, deciding which one is right for you would be based on the location. Do you, the partner or the customer, need this system to be on-premise in their own environment, or can it be hosted in the cloud like Business Central is in Azure, which is where SmartConnect.com lives as well? Integration points. So with Business Central, we're able to actually use either SmartConnect or SmartConnect.com. But for example, something like Dynamics GP today has to use SmartConnect on-premise, just the way that system works. But we're talking all cloud today. And then development needs. So on-premise allows for certain types of scripting, where in SmartConnect.com, we are using JavaScript when needed. So it's important to know those differences as we start talking about these two different tools. So talking specifically about what we're going to see today with WithoutWire. A lot of you are probably familiar with SmartConnect integration tools and SmartConnect connectors that are pre-built, like for Business Central, Nav, Dynamics GP, Salesforce NetSuite. We have connectors that are already out there. But today we're really going to focus on our REST services connector. And the reason for that is many software companies today allow us to connect to their data and access that data through a REST API. This is a huge advantage because we can really connect with anything outside of ERP, outside of CRM, outside of the Microsoft stack. And that's what we're going to talk about today and show you how we've done that with WithoutWire and SmartConnect.com, all with our REST services web connector. And we're doing that again, all in the cloud. So with SmartConnect.com, the REST web services connector allows us to connect to APIs to use for a data source or a destination for whatever we need to in a cloud interface. So there's nothing that has to be installed on premise. And what we're going to see today is important to talk about again. SmartConnect is a low code or a no code tool, depending on how you want to use it. But you don't need to be a developer to do the things that we've done today. So all the consultants on the phone call today, these are things that you're going to be able to deliver using the REST Web Services connector. So please keep that in mind as we're going through the demo today. So we want to get right into the demo so that you guys can see how all of this works in action. So I'm going to be turning it over to WithoutWire to start that. Please keep in mind that you're muted because this is being recorded. But if you have any questions throughout the demo, please put them in the chat box and we are going to try to get to all of those questions at the end here. So I'm going to go ahead and make Brett the presenter. So Brett, that should be coming over to you now.
Perfect. And what I'm going to do here is show my screen for you all. And Mary, if you could just go ahead and confirm when you do see the WithoutWire console and both web and mobile. Awesome. Thank you so much. So hi, I'm Brett Burial with WithoutWire. Thank you for the introduction, and Steve, thank you for all the input leading up to this as well. Today, we'll be showing the inbound and outbound workflows within the WithoutWire platform. You'll also be getting a quick peek at some general inventory operations capabilities, and even some that can apply to field services and some remote sites. So the look and feel of WithoutWire is not only seamless, as you can see between the two platforms, but it's also configurable to different users and accesses. So everything you see on the screen here can be adjusted for individual users with the removal and addition of tiles and the removal and addition of different features on the web platform as well. So for example, today, we will be having kind of 3 users that I'll be referring to throughout our process and our workflows. Those 3 users are going to be Elena, which is going to be a warehouse manager. We'll have Tony, which is going to be our inbound and outbound operations. And then we'll have Jacob, who's going to be our field or remote site user. So as you can see here, on our left is our web console. Also embedded within here, as Steve referenced here, we have our Power BI platform. This is something that will integrate real time as well to any of your inventory operations metrics. And you can adjust this as you see fit if you want to have any of your own KPIs included within this. On the right-hand side here, I have my mobile device. Today, I am using an iOS device. This can also be used via Android, and we have the capability to connect outside of four walls of a particular site or a warehouse as you see fit. So you can connect on LTE or any other connector there. You don't necessarily need to be on a wireless connection in totality. Also just want to show you here within the mobile console, we have the ability to take a screen as well. So you can just see my lovely keyboard here. And today I do want to show you as well that I am using a Bluetooth scanner. So again, something that can be added to any mobile devices, both iOS and or Android. So quick overview as well within the mobile console. Just want to get you familiarized with the look and feel. We have the ability to search for items within the WithoutWire platform. So if you aren't familiar with individual item numbers or anything of your items, you can do a plain search here, and then you can see any other item details where they reside within the warehouse or your site, and you can see any other attributes or anything that you see fit. You can also do a main screen scan lookup. So our searching capabilities cover you in both regard. So if I just do a scan here, you can see it brings up, again, all of the items that are currently within your site that you scanned, or all the quantities of that item in your site. Again, clicking in, seeing the item details for the lot that's assigned or any other serial, if it is serial tracked, the location, and then any attributes that you see fit there. So backing out here, you can see all the tiles, again, configurable. The blue and green tiles tend to be used for our field service capabilities or remote site capabilities, whereas our orange tiles tend to be used for more of our warehousing and operations. Today, what you will be mainly seeing is our receiving tile here, and then also our picking tile here. Those will be the two that will play in the most. So let's get started here. We're going to have a workflow to where we are going to be receiving some product in, and then we're going to be moving it around, getting it where it needs to go, and then ultimately having it go outbound. So first and foremost, we need to make sure that we have product available for us to have those outbound orders go out. So what we'll do is we're going to jump in to D365 Business Central. And you can see you're probably familiar with this. We can touch these different notes here. We have our sales and our purchasing that will be playing within. So Elena is going to be the user that is doing this. Elena is jumping in. What she's going to do is she's going to input a purchase order into Business Central. In this case, she is going to go ahead and take this 106021 order from First Up Consultants. She's going to navigate in there, and you can see she's already put together the items that are going to be flowing in, the location in which they're going to, and then the pieces, as you can see here, 10, 5, and 100. So reference these because we'll be showing those, basically how those can adjust later in the process when we do go through the receipt of those items. So what we'll do here is we are just going to release this individual order. And Elena has now released that, and it should be now flowing within to the WithoutWire platform. So you can see it's within that release status. And this is where SmartConnect would take the reins and make sure that it's all flowing into WithoutWire. So if I go into my receiving tile here on my mobile console, you will see that that individual order has now shown up here, that 106021. Again, referencing the quantities that you can see, we have each one of those of the 10, 5, and 100. So you can see that that comes through very, very quickly. But Elena's not quite done here. What she'll also do is to save time, she's going to go ahead and do her sales orders as well. So what we'll do here is she'll jump into her sales order side of things. And just going to do a quick filter here. And you can see that she has one that is currently open as well that she does need to release. So we can reference this for later in the process, again, when we fulfill that individual sales order. So you can see the quantities that are all included. The status is in open. We're just going to go into release this particular order. That'll be in a release status and available for us to then pick down the road when we go through that process. So let's go ahead and move on then. So Elena has gone through, she's approved her orders, and now Tony, who is going to be our inbound and outbound operations user, what he's going to do is he is going to begin receiving within the WithoutWire. So within the mobile handheld, what he's going to do is he's going to navigate to the individual order that he wants to go ahead and receive. It gives us the item details, so you can see the Athens desk, the guest chair, and then the mobile pedestal as well. So you can do these in any order. So our first item here is our lot tracked item. So what we'll do is we'll scan the barcode of that item. You can see on this 092220, this is an auto-populated value for your lot. That's something that is configurable within the WithoutWire platform and something that we can use if you don't have your own lot naming convention all set up right away. So to complete this receiving, you just select OK, and it takes you to attributes as well. And I apologize, my mobile device is slowing down on me a little bit here. So we'll just wait here for a second for that to catch up. So you can see here on the attributes, you have the ability to enter in your own as you are receiving them, or what you can do is you can have them all the same for a particular run of those items coming through. Again, this is something that is configurable and you can add at your discretion. And you can see that that has now been received. So it has grayed out that line, so we can move on to our next item. And let's just say our next item, we don't necessarily have to go in order, is that 1906, which is that mobile pedestal. So I'm gonna go ahead and scan that one. So you can see it's gonna take me then to just the receiving screen. This is a basic receiving. So all we're gonna do here is we can adjust that quantity. And let's say, you know what, Tony only found 50 of those that were available. So Tony has already received those. And you know what? Now Tony actually walked back and he said, you know what, I found 50 more and those were actually damaged. So what we'll see here is when we go in and adjust these quantities, we have the options here to damage those right away. We can add a line if we are adding more for lots or for serials. And then we can also just select that damage, and that will be sending back from an integration perspective back to your ERP. So we're gonna go ahead and damage the 50 remaining quantities there. And you can see that again, it clears out that line. So our final item that we need to receive here is gonna be our serial tracked item. So once we scan our serial tracked item, you'll see that it prompts us for an individual serial number. In this case, what we can do is we can rapidly scan and get all of these scanned in right away. So I'm gonna scan my first one, followed by my second, my third, fourth, and fifth. So as you can see here, if I back out, you can see all of those lines were scanned in appropriately with a particular serial number in accordance with what was received. Now, once we receive these will move to our put away process. And something that is able to do if we need to use these or move all these at the same time, something that's easy for Tony is he can just go ahead and select all of these. And what he'll want to do here is he wants to move them directly to a license plate. So he's just selecting all of these. He's gonna move those directly then to a license plate. He can do one at a time. He can scan a particular license plate. So in this case, we just have something that's pre-printed. We can also auto-generate those as well. Obviously, that hasn't been created in our system, so we are creating it. And then we've moved those individually there. So if he wants to then move the remainder of what those want to be, apologize, I got fat fingers today. He can just go ahead and scan each one of those directly to that LP that he wants to do. So quick, seamless, so that down the road, we don't actually have to move those individually. So all of this can be done so that you have bottlenecks or no bottlenecks then down the road as you see fit. So as you can see here, simply scanning those in. And moving them directly to that license plate. Again, a license plate being a movable bin that goes throughout your warehouse or your site that you can hold on to. So now that we're complete with each one of those line items, we can go ahead and complete out that individual order. So this is what we're gonna see here. So Tony's gonna select okay. He'll complete that individual purchase order and be prompted for a signature. So this is for that tracking capabilities. Either can be configured to be either the internal on Tony's side, or if there is a truck driver that is waiting for that individual receipt. So in this case, we can put in that driver. Click OK, and that will be included with that final document or that bill of lading. And that can be then found on the web console here. So if we validate and go to our receiving console, we can select this, go to that individual order here, and you can see all of the items are completed with that signature captured as well. So let's go ahead and validate that this went back into our D365 Business Central area. So what Elena is going to do, she's going to go into her purchasing, go to purchase orders, and then what she can do is she can go in and find that individual order that was released. And you'll be able to see here that you have your original quantities. And then if you move over, your quantity to receive and to invoice has now been updated to that 50 that you did receive. And if you remember, we did also damage some of those, so we did not receive the full quantities there. So from here, she can post that batch or do anything that she needs to do from a final steps standpoint. So now that we've received some of this product, let's go ahead and make sure that we can move some stuff around so that we can put quantities down for our sales order that was also input by Elena. So what we're going to do here is we are going to go ahead and execute what we call a cross-site move. So this makes it really very easy for users to move product from one location to another. Again, being either like a main warehouse or also moving to a remote site, or it could be a tech van or a tech truck. However the process may work and however you see fit. So what Tony's going to do here, and Tony again is our inbound outbound operations. What he's going to do is he's standing looking at a bin location, and you know what, that LP that we just moved everything onto, he's just going to go ahead and scan that, and you can see the 5 items that we had added to that individual LP. So let's say he wants to move this LP to a inventory location in our east site. So he's going to navigate to that move tile. He's going to then scan in that LP 9001. And what he's going to do is he's going to move that to inventory bin 1. As you can see, we have inventory bin 1 that is in multiple sites. So what he can do here is he can select then the site that he wants to move it to. In this case, what we'll want to do is move it to the east site from the main into that inventory bin 1. So that has fully been moved. Now we're wondering, well, how do we keep an eye on that? How do we make sure our users are doing the right thing? What we do here is we have an overall look here, so you can see cross-site moves will populate for when you use them. So you can see the details that are on there. It'll show your 5 items, and again, we'll show you any big tickets or final documents, again, that will supplement what that cross-site move will be, similar to a pick request or an order that went out. So you can either have Tony or Elena validate that just to make sure on the WithoutWire web console side of things. So another operation standpoint is the requesting of inventory. So now we're going to jump over to our good friend Jacob. Jacob's at that remote site in the East warehouse. So I'm just going to go ahead and switch over. Jacob here is in the East. And what he'll do is say, you know what, I need to fill this order. So we need to get some product over to my individual warehouse. So what he'll want to do here is he'll just go to this request inventory tile. He can choose where he wants to request that inventory from. And again, this is all configurable within WithoutWire. And he's going to say, I want to select it from the main warehouse and then the date in which I'm wanting to have those come in. So, and that's today. When I select next, he'll be prompted then with all the items that are currently available to request. So in this case, let's just say, you know what, he's going to need some of this, the mobile pedestals, and we'll just select those here. You can select multiple items or just one, and you can also select all of them if you do want to request everything. It'll have the inventory request kind of as a summary here for us to select. And this is where we can adjust any of the quantities here. We can add them up, we can subtract some. And then if we have something where we're requesting a significant amount of them, we can also type that in here. But he's pretty modest and he's just going to request 5 of these. It'll also then send you to the request inventory summary, again, giving you just a high level view of what that's going to be. And now that request has gone through. So what we'll do then is Jacob sent that over and Tony is going to be able to pick that for us. So what Tony's going to do, and again, Tony is residing in that main warehouse. Tony's going to navigate here to the picking side of things. And this is going to be a preview into what we're going to do for our sales order here in a moment. But what you can see is it validated or brought in a transfer order here automatically. And you can see that it's the request that Jacob had made for those 5 pedestals. So what Tony is going to do here is he already has some of this on an LP somewhere in his warehouse. So what he's going to do is he's just going to pick the entirety of that LP. So he just scanned one. This is the LP transfer 105 for him. He's going to pick the entirety of that, and you can see that it fulfills the entirety of that line. So also as a quick reminder, it will populate the LP for review as well if you are wondering what is going to be going out the door. So what happens here is Tony's going to select OK. He has his final documents printed for that transfer, and again, the pics removed from his list. The final step of this transfer is then going to be when Jacob jumps into his site as well, or when that order comes in. He's going to simply navigate to this receive inventory tile. Again, we were playing mainly within these orange tiles, but what makes it quick and simple and easy here is we hold on to those license plates. So he can just do a simple scan in of what that box was after that barcode was scanned in and put on the license plate for those 5 items. And what Jacob's going to do here is he's just going to scan that LP TR105, and you can see that it's again holding on to that license plate in the other site, in our remote site here, with that mobile pedestal of the 5 pieces. So now that inventory actually has been received, and now Jacob has enough to then fulfill what he wants to do for that sales order that Elena put in earlier. So we've moved that product around, and let's do a final review of what we're going to be needing for that sales order. So again, we're staying in that east site as the Jacob user. And what Jacob is going to do is he's going to navigate to his picking tile. On his picking tile, you can see that that individual order from Elena is now within his particular queue. Here, he'll select that order, and you can see that it's the 10, the 5, and 5 that are all needed. Now, you can see at the very bottom, we have no inventory available of this 1920S. So what we'll do is we won't be able to pick that at that time, and we can short that on that particular order. But let's go ahead and run down through our list here and make sure that we are taking into account everything that we need on this order. So first and foremost, what we'll do is we want to scan in a packing LP. So basically this what helps us control and have a license plate for that box in the event that we need to kind of hold on to that box or stage it later in that process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate a brand new license plate for our sales order here. And you can see that it gives me that visual confirmation that that has now able to be added to inventory. So inventory, as soon as we scan it in, will be added to this particular license plate, again, for tracking if we need to stage this order down the line. So let's go ahead and pick another full LP. Since we have it available, that LP 9001, which is our 5 of those serial tracked items, again, that we brought in earlier. We're going to pick that full LP. It completes out that line for us. And then you can see that we can move on to others as well. So if we need to pick this 1906 as well, what we can do is we can pick the entirety of that transfer order as well. So you can see that LP that we transferred in of those 5 pieces. We'll select yes. And you can see that we have more that we need to fulfill. The remainder are going to be in inventory bin 1. So again, if we scan that item once more, that 1906, it does create a second line for us. And in this case, it'll show you both that are coming in. But let's say, you know what, we actually are going to short this. We don't have product available for that. It will complete out that line. And the very last one here, this 1920, we have none available of this conference table left in that or in our remote site. Unfortunate that we won't be able to pick this, but again, we'll see this reflected then as it flows back into Business Central. So again, you can just select that line, select our options, and then we can short that, again, completing out this order for us and shipping it out. Once we select OK, it will auto ship for us, and it'll print our final documents for us to review. In this case, I'm not connected directly to a printer, but you can see it's then removed from our pick list here. So Jacob has done the process then of getting the inventory sent out. And now what Elena wants to do is Elena will want to jump back into Business Central, and then she'll be able to validate in her sales side of things in the sales orders. Scroll down to that 1026 order. And then you can see that the fulfilled quantities on the right are going to match up what was shipped, what we shorted from the original, so only 5 were shipped. And then you can see as well the 10 here, and then the 0 quantities that we had shorted the full quantities for the 1920 that was expected. So that's a quick rundown of the inbound, the inventory operations, and then the outbound inventory from WithoutWire. And then Chris can now give us a little bit more insight into the integration pieces for how we got in between those two.
Thanks, Brett. Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you here.
All right.
So you can show us how we made that happen with SmartConnect.
All right. So what we should be viewing is the screen where I've got smartconnect.com available.
Yes.
Got a second tab there I'll flip to in a moment. But as mentioned earlier on the call, what I'm primarily going to focus on for this demonstration of SmartConnect is looking at the different connections we have in place, specifically what we can do around our REST connection, our generic connector, where you can build out new connections as needed. As that's something that WithoutWire was able to leverage very heavily with their API, with their solution to get that integration in place and tie their product together with Business Central and with other Dynamics ERPs. Now, if you're not familiar with smartconnect.com, I am going to breeze over a couple pieces of it to get to the main section of what I'm covering. But what I do want to cover just briefly before I get to that is when I'm navigating around SmartConnect, if we're looking at an integration, there's kind of three main pieces that go into it. The first is the connection that you're going to set up, and this is any system you're going to pull or push data to. The data source is the second half. That's how you're picking up that data and where you're picking that data up from. And then finally, under the process option, that's your integration process where you do the individual field level mappings. Now, as mentioned, I want to focus on this connection part today. And there's a couple of connections I'm going to look at. One is I'm going to talk briefly on the Business Central connections and what we can do with SmartConnect around that. And then the second one where I'll spend more time is around this REST connection. We'll actually set up a sample REST connection so we can show it working with yet another product besides just Business Central and WithoutWire that was demonstrated today. Now, for Business Central, we get a lot of questions around that with SmartConnect, primarily because Business Central has an on-premise version of it. It's got an online option, and there's always questions on what we exactly connect to with SmartConnect. So what we're working with when we connect to Business Central is we're going through their page services. We're not using their standard API. They've got an API of about 40-some, 50-some services that are always available, except Microsoft has kind of pared those down and removed a lot of fields that are useful when you're doing integrations. So we went to the main web service page inside Business Central, and what that allows us to do is any screen that you see in Business Central, whether it's the customer screen or a sales transaction, inventory journal, anything like that, there is a page service that sits behind it and powers it. And what that means is if you publish any of those services within Business Central by clicking a checkbox, that service becomes available in SmartConnect. And we can use that as a data source or as a destination. And we're able to connect to both the OData v4 and the SOAP-based endpoints for those services. The other large benefit to that is it allows us to handle any custom fields or any extensions that have been put into your Business Central, because those are all going to have their own page service or page field powering those as well, and we're able to bring that in. So that ends up being one of our standard connections in SmartConnect. Business Central is one of our base connectors. We don't have to do any extra effort to get that in place. However, if I go to this Create Connection option, you're going to see a mix of both standard connections and new connections that we built out with the REST connector. And for the most part, you can actually tell them apart once we get to the screen. But if we look at these last four on here, I've got a ShipStation, I've got a sample connection, ta-da, I've got WithoutWire, and I've got Zendesk in here. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to tear the sample connection one apart because it's going to an API that I can work with. It's relatively low authentication. I don't have to worry about messing up data. So we'll use that live here on the demo, and you can see how one of these is actually built. But once we use this REST connector to build out the connection, as you can see, they show up just like any of the other standard connections that we have listed inside of SmartConnect. So let's actually go to that definition, and I'll show everyone what a REST service and what a REST connection is composed of when we're building that. So one of the great things with this is any definition we build out, if we either build it out as eOne or WithoutWire builds out one or another partner goes ahead and creates some, these can all be exported and imported, so you don't have to redo the setup from customer to customer and from client to client while we're working on it. So if you've got another system you want to tie in, it's got a REST-based API, this is where you would start working on that definition. So I've named mine sample connection. You can go ahead and load whatever file you want in here for the image. I just did a nice bright colored one so we know it's not a real one that we want to interact with. But once we have that in place, there's a few main settings that we want to figure out that goes in any REST connection that we set up. First one is how do you authenticate? Second one is what data do we want to pull? And the third one is what data do we want to push to it? So you're deciding if you're taking data from it, sending data back, and how we authenticate with it. Now, what I've done here, and I've actually got a second tab, is I found a free kind of sample API. So there's no real system behind this, but some very nice people put up a sample API. It has different methods on there, so you can test out calling data, pulling it back, pushing data to it, seeing what that response is. So it makes a perfect example for a demo like this. Now, what I'm going to do with this is I've got the basic URL on here, and there's a couple options that I want to show. I want to show pulling data, so we'll use this user option as one of them. We know what the request is going to be. We know what it's going to look like when it pulls back, and we'll also use this create user option for the destination. So we can try it for both the data source and a destination, and this process would be the same no matter what API you're working with, whether it's WithoutWire, whether it's a Shopify, Magento, whether it's another third-party system. All these steps are going to be very similar in terms of how we set it up. So apologize if it gets very technical, but this is what it goes into it for the first few steps of getting this definition created. So let's focus on this first one, pulling data out. So I found an endpoint. It's called list users. It shows me what the data is going to look like when it pulls back. And it also shows me what I need to call to get to that. So it's going to be this URL, and then you throw API users onto that. So whatever system you're working with, it should have some sort of documentation like that one, so you know what you're doing when you're creating the definition. So if we were going from scratch, what we'll do is you'd put the base URL in here. So in this case, it's just that res option in there. Then when you're looking at doing a data source or destination, you're going to be working with the service entity and the service action. So since this is just a sample system and we don't have any authentication, I can leave that set to none. If you're working with a real system, they're likely to use one of the following 3 authentication methods, and that's where you'd set up that option. And we'll go ahead and give you those choices when you get to connect. It'll make you throw in the correct authentication at that point. But in our case, we're saying no authentication, and we want to pull some data out. So on the service entity, I've went ahead and created this already called get users. You get to name it whatever you want. I'm just going to name it the same thing it had it listed on that site there. When I click edit on here, I get to say where we're pulling that data from. So I'm grabbing it from that API users endpoint, which is the same thing we see on the page here. So they have a page equals 2. That's just for paging. If you're not familiar with that, that'd be covered in a more detailed session. But the base idea is taking it from API users and then getting our list of data from that. So we said API users. For the field section, this is where we determine what gets pulled back from that URL or from that endpoint. So what I was able to do is grab the payload from that tab where it lists everything out on here. I saved that to a file, and I simply loaded that in, and SmartConnect was able to parse that out and break it out into different fields in terms of, in a way that will recognize it when we're running it through SmartConnect. So that is the very basic setup of pulling data from it. If you know what the API endpoint is, and it shows you an example of what that data will look like on the page or on that documentation, you can go through and get that base service entity set up to start pulling data. Now there's a lot more that can go into this. We can do different work with parameters and scripting, and if they take different variables to filter that data down. But for the time we have today, we're going to keep it at that base example, just pulling a set of data from that endpoint, not adding the extra filtering onto it. So that's the list users for the service entity. We want to pull data out from there. On the service action, we do the opposite thing. This is using that API as a destination for any REST connection you may have. So I went ahead and started one called create user. We've set it up. Again, it's using the same endpoint, that API users. Oftentimes that endpoint will be used for both pulling and pushing data in a REST API. But in this case, you change that request method. So when we're getting data, we did a get. When we're sending data back, we do a post on that. And the same thing kind of applies on here. When we're looking at our fields, in this case, we're looking at the fields we want to pass into it rather than what's being returned. So if I switch back one more time to this create option on here, this is the data that's being passed in. So for this example, it's fairly simple. You can just pass a name and a job on there, but that's the data that I copied out and I was able to add in on my example here in SmartConnect. Now, for this create, we can do our fields, and once again, you can load that from file. You can load it directly from JSON. So if I wanted to, I could pop this up and copy paste, or if I would have copied that from here, copy that payload from there, you can copy paste right in, and it's going to go ahead and parse that for you and pull out the fields. So that's what I did prior to this call, just to make sure I could have this saved, and that dropped my job and name in there. And the final step is to say, all right, let's actually use that job and name in that payload. So in this case, we're replacing any hard-coded values with what we want to map to it in the SmartConnect map to make sure that works the same way as if you were mapping to Business Central or to another Dynamics product or any of our other destinations. We want to make sure this shows up in the same manner. So it's a very quick example on here, but I wanted to show we're pulling set up to do the get user portion on that, and I wanted to show the destination for us to be able to use that create user action. Now, obviously, with the real example, we'd flush this out a lot more, where we'd have multiple entities and multiple actions for pushing and pulling data, depending on the API that we're working with. So if we get that saved, we've got the icon, probably the least important part, but we do have the destination and the data source portion set up on there. So if I go through my connection list now, I don't have a connection for that yet. What we'll do is we'll create a new connection. I'll use that sample connection that I've configured on here. And it's going to go ahead and let me name this, I believe, before it goes ahead and creates that for it. Now, if you had authentication, it's at this point it would ask you for any of those authentication credentials or tokens when we're setting that up. Since this one is a sample and we don't have any of those, we'll go ahead and just leave it at the name, close that down, and now we've got a new sample connector on here. And I know I'm running low on time, so we'll not go through the full process, but I wanted to show if I go to set up a data source based off of this, we'll see that data source portion in here when I create a new query in SmartConnect. We'll have that sample connection as an option now that I've configured it. I'll just call this my data -new. I'll make use of my new sample connection I've configured, and then I only have that one endpoint configured as my sample data, so I can set that up, make sure it connects with validation, and then I can even preview it from here before I use it on a map. So that particular API, that get user list, is returning me users from that location. We've got the email, first name, last name. So the endpoint that I based my connection on is returning the data that I was expecting inside of here. So I could now save this, and I could use that in a full integration off of that. Same thing would apply when I do the destination. We'll see that as a destination option in that field mapping, but due to time, we're not going to be able to get to that today. So from the SmartConnect side, just a quick recap, focused mainly on that REST connector. The idea is whether it's WithoutWire, whether it's another REST-based API, you can go ahead and create that definition out to it and then use it on any mappings that are needed for a particular client or for multiple implementations if you have a set of customers that are doing very similar work. So I'll leave that there for my portion of the demo here, and I'll turn it back
Chris,
over.
We've got a question actually.
Awesome.
We've got a question in the chat box. When you're working with REST connectors, how do you evaluate those APIs? Can you talk about some of the criteria that we look for?
Yep, absolutely. And let me actually share my screen again. Hopefully it's back on the SmartConnect page. So when evaluating a REST connector, there's a couple things I look for right away. One is first thing first is there documentation for that API? There's multiple sites and systems out there that have a REST connector that don't have any documentation around it. If there's no documentation, it's going to be next to impossible to set up a REST connection. We need something to base it off of from that perspective. If they do have documentation, I then look at the authentication type, because we support basic authentication, we support token exchange, and we support OAuth 2. If it falls into one of those three categories, I know we can connect, we can authenticate to it. And the final option is kind of like on this site, I look to see if they've got documentation on the actual endpoints. What I'm looking for is kind of like a JSON payload that either gets sent or returned on any one of these. And I look for any different examples or, areas to know what type of command I'm doing, whether it's a get or a post. And if I can find that information out, that should be enough to know that it's going to at least connect, and we'll be able to work with the endpoints through SmartConnect.
Awesome, thanks, Chris.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and make myself presenter again here. Which is not working out so well.
While Mary's pulling that up, we do welcome any questions that you had. Brett and Chris, great job on the demonstration. And we got the experts on the line here, so now's a great time. If you do have a question or two, it's probably a question the rest of the folks may have something very similar. There, it's coming up, Mary.
Sorry about that. It was just not wanting to cooperate there. And I'm sharing the wrong one there. But anyways, if you guys have any questions, just please type them in the chat box. If not, or you want to email questions afterwards, here is the contact information for Steve and myself, and feel free to email us or reach out. We're going to be sharing this recording afterwards as well. So you can pass that around your office or look back at it another time. So be on the lookout for that in your email box after this. So I know we're just at time here. All right, well, if there's no questions, we are just going to end it here. Thank you for joining us today, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.